Hannah Claire Foster was born on the 31st of August 1985. She was an A-level student after recently taking her GCSEs and getting straight A's. She'd been looking forward to her future and furthering her career to study medicine at university. She had done a week's worth of work experience in a hospital and absolutely loved it. Hannah lived with her parents, Hilary and Trevor, and her younger sister, Sarah, in Southampton. Hannah was always a happy girl, and her mum said she always had a ready smile on her face. She always saw the good in people and wanted to help others, which is why she was looking forward to medicine. Hannah was flourishing into a beautiful young woman. Her parents were very proud of her, and she was very respectful towards them. She would always be in touch with them, she would always tell them where she was going, and she would never not call or stay out beyond the time she told them she was going to be back.
Once she came home later than we anticipated without telling us. She could see how worried we were about it, and after that she always made sure that she was going to be late. If she was going to go later than she told us, that she got in contact.
She liked to go out with friends, socialise, but she would never drink too much. She was very careful and controlled. On the 14th of March 2003, Hannah was excited to go out socialising with a friend in Southampton. That night the pair got ready and met up in town. The idea was to go for a few drinks and see who was about. The pair visited the Hobbit bar, buying a double vodka and mixer, but that was the only drink that each of them had all night. They then walked to the nearby sober bar. After chatting and having fun, at around 10:50 p.m, the pair decided that there was no one else out. The town seemed quiet tonight, and they decided to individually go their separate ways. Her friend waited for the bus on Portswood Road, while Hannah Foster decided to walk the half a mile, 800 metres, back to her home alone. It was dark, but the roads were well lit, and it was a walk that she did daily from a young age. She knew it was not far, so she walked. And as she got to the end of her road, her friend who was waiting by the bus saw Hannah turn around and wave before she walked away out of sight. But something happened to Hannah that night on the darkened streets, as she was abducted by a passing vehicle. At 5 a.m. the next morning, Hannah's parents noticed that she had not come home. They knew something terrible must have happened, but did not want to fear the worst. At 10:30 a.m, the local police were informed of her disappearance. The initial investigation focused on her prepaid mobile phone, which was still active. Police were able to trace its movements in the early hours, travelling south using signal towers.
I instinctively knew that there was a problem when I woke on Saturday morning. She'd never, ever failed to communicate. It was a very, very terrifying and frustrating day because we knew Hannah. We were well aware that the police had had people say before, we know our daughter, she wouldn't run away from home. And it was just one of rising panic. I actually wanted to physically go and smash down all the doors in the neighbouring houses, and it was just a very long, very terrifying day.
In Portsmouth, at a recycling centre, her phone and bag were found dumped in a bottle recycling bin.
We found her bag at a glass recycling centre in Portsmouth, and we now believe that it was left in a bottle bank in Southsea somewhere after 6 o'clock on the Saturday morning.
Someone was seen putting what we believe was Hannah's bag in a bottle bank there.
Yes, we've got a vague description of a male seen putting a cloth material, which would appear to be Hannah's bag, in a bottle bank that morning. We're obviously trying to find out who that might be. It may be there's a perfectly innocent reason for putting it in. Somebody found it and put it there. So we obviously appeal to anybody who did put a bag in a bottle bin to come forward.
On the 16th of March, Hannah Foster's body had been found dumped in bushes on Lington Road, West End, just outside of Southampton. A teen looking out of the window of the car saw what he thought was a leg sticking out of a hedge. It was a young female. Her parents were informed that it was Hannah, but her mother wanted to see her. Detectives told her not to. A post-mortem examination revealed that she had been RAPED'd and strangled. There was semen found on her clothing, but it could not be matched to anyone in the database. Maybe the perpetrator had not committed any previous crimes and his DNA was not on file. Investigators also traced her phone calls. Detectives were able to find that during the time she was abducted, she had tried, unbeknown to the person that had murdered her, to call the police. They had been driving south along the M27 when frantically Hannah Foster had secretly made a 999 call to the emergency services at 11 p.m. in the hope that they would realise she was in trouble. However, there was no direct communication with the operator, and as the voices were indistinct, the call was treated as a probable misdial and forwarded to Silent Solutions, a 2-minute-long recorded message telling people in need of assistance to dial 55. Investigators then enhanced the recording and were able to learn that Hannah was in the back of a van being driven by a man of South Asian descent.
Detective Superintendent Alan Betts of Hampshire Police. Alan, this 999 call that Hannah tried to make, what can you tell us about it?
It's very difficult to discern exactly what is said on the tape recording. It's clearly a male voice, and from what we can make out, it appears to be a stranger to Hannah. We're trying our best to enhance it.
After identifying 7 vans on CCTV footage that might fit that route taken, a public appeal for information was made by the parents on the 26th of March via Crime Watch.
What can you tell us about a motive for Hannah's murder and how she died?
Well, we now believe that the motive was sexual and that she was strangled, left in Allington Lane after she'd been killed somewhere else. We're appealing to anybody who might have any idea of where she may have been assaulted. It's possible she was taken to a lover's lane or a dark area, and members of the public might have seen somebody there and dismissed it as a lover's tiff or something like that.
The supervisor at Hazelwood Foods identified Mirinda as one of the company's drivers as a possible suspect. He had taken a van home that night, as he did not have his own vehicle and had a similar delivery route. He had a fresh scratch on the side of his face and was unable to complete his shift the next day, investigators noting that the same van was on their shortlist. They soon found blood and semen in the back of the vehicle and retraced its route in and around Southampton, the M27 Portsmouth and the recycling centre. Now identified by investigators as a prime suspect, it was soon realised that Mirinda had already travelled to Heathrow Airport and gone to Delhi, apparently to visit his comatose mother. Police arrived at his home to find that he had already set off to Delhi. His wife was there with his children. She was a UK citizen, and they took DNA samples from both of the children. They spoke to his wife, she was a UK citizen, and his brother, a policeman in India. However, Mirinda denied his involvement in the murder. The case stalled for the next 15 months after Indian police were not able to prioritise the crime and media attention was low. On the 10th of July 2004, however, Hannah Foster's parents, frantic at this point, with worry that this man would never be caught, went over to India themselves and made a public appeal for information on his whereabouts. During their 10-day visit, the Fosters held a series of press conferences as well as opening a telephone hotline. Their visit soon became a subject of high nationwide interest in the Indian press. Back in the UK, Hampshire Police, in conjunction with the Sun newspaper, announced a reward of £5 million to anyone whose information led to the arrest of Mirinda Coyle. On the 15th of July, after a number of tip-offs, Mirinda was arrested by an off-duty policeman in West Bengal's Darjeeling district, where he'd been working under an alias for the Red Cross. And while over in India, he'd not only started working for the Red Cross, but he'd married another woman, despite the fact that he'd not divorced the one he had in England. Police managed to arrest him while he was boarding a bus to Nepal with his new wife. On the 28th of July, Mirinda admitted to raping and murdering Hannah Foster in an interview with a private television channel, and said that he was forced to kill Hannah because after raping her, she had refused not to report the crime to police. He did not want his wife, his children, and his job finding out about what he had done. He didn't want to be locked up. In August 2004, He retracted his statement, saying it was not by his own will. Merinda was then held in custody in New Delhi pending extradition to the United Kingdom, and the case underwent 100 court proceedings and 35 appeals. After 3 years of wrangling, a final decision to extradite him to the UK was handed down on the 8th of June 2007. And on the 28th of July, Merinda arrived at Heathrow Airport and was arrested and charged as soon as he hit the tarmac. He was also charged with manslaughter, false imprisonment, and perverting the cause of justice. In 2007, Merinda entered a plea of not guilty to the charges at Winchester Crown Court. Merinda initially argued he simply found someone had broken into his van and dumped Hannah's body in there, causing him to panic and then have to discard of her. He later argued, after DNA evidence was produced, that criminals had forced him to RAP and murder Hannah. On the 25th of November 2008, Merinda, then aged 41, was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life imprisonment with a recommended minimum term of at least 24 years, less 2 years for the time he'd already served. Hannah Foster's family expressed their disappointment in the sentence, hoping the killer would have to spend the rest of his life in prison. Under the trial judge's recommendation, Merinda is expected to remain in prison until at least 2030, and he will be the age of 63. When his children have all grown up and understand what their father did, when his wife has probably moved on, and when he will probably not be able to get a job because of his criminal record. Let's pray for the people that were left behind when Hannah tragically died. Her mother, her father, and her beautiful sister and friends. Let's hope they now are able to have some kind of peace and some kind of closure in this terrible, terrible case.